Welcome to Say More, the Powerhouse podcast dedicated to elevating the voices and journeys of women striving for the C-suite and those who've already conquered it. Brace yourself for candid conversations, illuminating interviews, and unfiltered insights as we delve into the triumphs, hurdles, and invaluable lessons learned along the path to success. Join us on this empowering journey where inspiration meets empowerment and wisdom reigns supreme. Get ready to ignite your ambition, harness your potential, and thrive alongside your sisters on Say More. Good morning and welcome to another episode of Say More. Say More podcast. My goodness, we're right at a year. Can you believe it? It's been nearly 12 months. We have listeners all over the world, 10 countries to be exact. This started off as a passion project for us, but my goodness, we are doing great things together because we grow here, we learn here. And today is no different. As we think about kicking off 2025, I wanted to bring the very best. And yes, the name may throw you off a little bit because you're thinking two Dr. Kim Moores in one place, but you will quickly settle in that this is such an amazing conversation, an amazing individual that we had to do this together. So luckily our paths connected. Dr. Kim Moore, a pleasure to have you here. I am so excited, and probably just to get us started, we're probably going to do an icebreaker first, and then we'll jump into unpacking who you are in that amazing journey that not only that you've had, but you are continuing to have. So to get us going, if your leadership journey were a book title, what would it be and why?
Well, first off, Kim, thank you for the opportunity to be here with another great Kim this morning. And yes, we're starting the year off together with hopefully information that's going to help and change women's lives, but also give them support. And so I'm so glad that you asked that question because at the end of last year, I published a book, and the title of the book is You're in the Leadership Chair. Now what?
Oh my goodness.
And that is why I named the book that, because I found myself throughout my career in the leadership chair, not always knowing what I needed to do to stay in that chair.
Oh my gosh, this is such a perfect conversation for our audience because again, with Say More, we're meeting everyone where they are. You know, whether you're a student, maybe you're a high school senior, maybe you're in college, maybe you're in your second job and you're trying to figure out about a career change, or maybe you've reached that C-suite and you love it and it's time to share. And so I love that what you're talking about now, our audience will not only get to hear our conversation today, but to follow that up with your book. I mean, I love that. I think if we had to, when I looked at your experiences in the military, corporate America, and education, how that probably shaped your perspective. What does that mean to lead as a woman as we have this conversation today?
Well, what it means is that we as women have to recognize that we have unique gifts and talents.
Yeah.
We were created by God to be who we are and not to imitate or try to be like our male counterparts. And so that was a lesson I learned very early in my military career, because most of the time I was the only female on the staff as an officer. I was the only person of color. And so early on, I thought I had to be like my male counterparts to be successful. And I was very blessed to meet a senior female officer, and she recommended a book to me. And I read that book, and it's no longer in circulation, but it was titled The Games Your Mother Never Taught You to Play.
Oh, wow.
And it was geared toward women. And when I read that book, I began to understand God blessed me with a certain set of talents.
Yes.
That's what I use to move me forward as a leader. Understanding that I work in a diverse world,
Yeah.
but I truly am a leader. and the
Yeah.
confidence that goes along with that, given the fact that I am a woman.
Yeah.
And so that changed the trajectory of my career because no longer did I try to fit in with the
Yes.
guys. I was me.
Ah, that's so again, I suspect that there are going to be so many nuggets and also so many drop the mic moments, and that being one of them, because oftentimes, we do find ourselves that we're trying to fit in so much so that we lose who we are
Hmm.
and who we were destined to be. It also points out for me that as you're talking, the importance of leaders like yourself and others. I mean, we can all share with others, but that nugget that leader shared with you that changed the trajectory of your life, you just never know. And I am hopeful and I am believing that with this conversation with Say More, that it will do just that and go beyond, our country and into the 10 countries that we've already mentioned that we've actually been able to plant those seeds. Um, so much coming from that point. But then I think about, many women do struggle with self doubt. Let's go
Hmm.
there. I mean, that's a real thing. And at different stages of their career, how did you build confidence, especially when stepping into high stake roles like your position at the Pentagon? Yes, Say More audience, the Pentagon. So how did that work?
Well, it started when I was a child with my grandfather because my grandfather, in his own way, told me I was a leader. Because when my cousins and I would be at his house for all of the holidays, and he lived in a smaller home, he would always call my name out and one of my other cousins and tell us to lower our voices. One day I finally asked him, why did he always pick on me? And he said, I'm not picking on you. He said, Kim, your cousins follow you. So when you lower your voice, they lower their voice. When
Oh,
they do what
wow.
you do. And that was his way of telling me I was a leader. So I always knew I was a leader. It was through experiences and having good mentors who reminded me of the things that I bring to the table, the skills and the gifts and the talents that God has blessed me with. And as a woman of faith, I always go back to what God tells me in his word, but
Yeah.
what he has shown me throughout my career. And that's why I wrote the book that I just published, because we can get to that chair of leadership, but when we get there, what do we do to stay there? So I offer strategies that will help you stay there. In my first assignment as a young, brand new lieutenant, and I was only 20 years old when I was commissioned
Oh
as a
my
second
goodness.
lieutenant because I started college when I was 16.
Uh-huh.
And I went to an assignment, non-traditional military assignment, where I was at a what we called a chemical storage depot. My boss was the leader of all of the operations, of the laboratory operations, and I was his deputy. Well, the person I supervised was literally old enough to be my grandfather. He had a granddaughter named Kim, and here I'm supposed to, and he had 30 years of experience, and I'm supposed to tell him what to do. But he was so kind and so gracious. God blessed me with a gentleman who said, I'm going to help you grow, Kim. Not in those words, but that was his
Yeah.
action. He taught me what I needed to do to supervise the 100 lab people that I was in charge of.
Yeah.
And we would meet every Monday. We would do our meeting together. He would give me the right questions. When we walked the lab, I could ask the questions, and over time, my knowledge grew. It is, he poured into me, and
Yes.
not everybody has that kind of person, but God has truly blessed me to have people along my journey who have stepped up to mentor me. And so, mentorship and sponsorship,
Yes.
and
There's a
there's a
difference.
difference,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your mentor pours into you. Your sponsor is the person in that room when you're not there to speak up for you. It just makes a difference. And that's why I talk about these strategies, because I really want women to be successful. We are great leaders. We
Yes.
bring a different style of leadership, but a very powerful leadership that resonates with the people we have the privilege to lead. So that's just a little bit
I
of why.
Oh my goodness. I love that. And again, if you're listening, say more audience, you're hearing that at 20, and that oftentimes, this journey started for her. But oftentimes along the way, there is individual, and there are individuals that will pour into us, giving us the desire, honestly, as we go forward to pour into others. But when I think about your conversation, is that, we're saying more and we're about women and how we're growing. It's also to realize that some of those who may be pouring into us will be men. And that's a great thing. And we want to celebrate those men along the way. I've shared this throughout the Say More conversations, that those who invested in me in large part over my career have been males. So yes, we don't want to turn away any of that support, and that sounds like an amazing story. Kim, I love to for you to share and probably level set the audience, because you've done so many things, but I want to bring them up to speed to the current role that you have, but I don't want to miss anything too. So could you give us kind of a roadmap to where you are now, and then we'll jump back into our other questions.
Well, that's interesting because my my roadmap, Kim, has been one that is very different.
Uh-huh.
Basically, I'm in my third career
Uh-huh.
in where I'm at now. So I am a superintendent of a large school district in the southern part of the United States. Never, when I was growing up, I'd never had the desire to be a teacher, much less a superintendent. I wanted to be an FBI agent. But because I started college so early, to be an agent, you had to be 23. I graduated when I was 20. I was in ROTC, so the recruiter said do 3 years in the military, and when you get out, you'll have veterans preference. When I joined the military, excuse me, I found where God wanted me to be.
Uh-huh.
I loved my military career, and I spent 20 years serving our country, and it was truly a wonderful career. But I
Wow.
knew at the 20-year mark, as I retired as a lieutenant colonel, that it was time for me to do something else to transition. And so I retired, but that transition wasn't an easy one for me. And the
Yeah.
reason for that is when you spend 20 years in a very structured system, I knew what I was going to wear every day. I knew how to style my hair. I even knew what color nail polish and lipstick I could wear. That's how structured the military is,
Yeah.
which I thrived in. And then it was, what am I going to do? And so that's where I did my short stint in corporate America. I do, and I still do some leadership. I do leadership coaching and consulting, but I also did some retail work where,
Uh-huh.
because I love to shop, and I just tried to figure out where my next career opportunity would be. And a very good friend of mine, we had been lieutenants together throughout our whole career. We were connected because we were both chemical corps officers. He had retired and became a teacher, and he said, you should be a teacher, Kim. If you think about the jobs that you loved the most when you were on active duty, it was being a basic training company commander. It was teaching at what we called our schoolhouse. He
Yeah.
said, you should become a teacher. And so I thought, I'll try it. And God opened the door for me to become a high school science teacher because that's my background.
Yeah.
And my principal, I was a first year teacher, and my principal came to me and said, you should be an administrator. And I'm like, no, sir, I'm not an administrator. I'm just going to teach students. That's what I'm
Right.
loving. And he's like, no, you're a leader. You need to be an administrator. So after 3 years in the classroom, I became an administrator and did a variety of jobs at the district. I was a principal, assistant principal, district resource teacher, district supervisor, director. And when I left the principalship, I went back downtown to be back to the central office to be the deputy for the chief of schools. And once again, he said to me, have you thought about being a superintendent? And I was like, no, sir, that's not my path. And he's like, I think you have what's needed to be a superintendent, Kim. So he sent me to a school to learn about being a superintendent. And when I got to the school, it was like, I can be a superintendent.
Oh, wow.
And so then I left that job to be an assistant superintendent, which put me in a position to learn the knowledge, skills, the
Yeah.
practical hands-on skills. And then I went out and started searching, and God blessed me with this opportunity that I have now. But during that journey, it was the people that God put in my pathway
Right.
to birth those things that He already planned for me. And people always ask me, how did being in the military set you up for where you are now? Well, one of the things the military does very well is they spent 20 years pouring into me as a leader with
Yes.
schools. I mean, that's one thing the
Yes.
military does well. We train our soldiers, our sailors, airmen, Marines, we train them, we pour into them. Whether you're an officer or enlisted, we equip you with the skills you need to be a leader because we don't hire from outside. We
Yes.
promote from within. So we have to prepare the people we're going to raise up to be leaders. And that's what they did. Excuse me. And
What an
so
amazing
that set me
path and
up.
journey. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
I, some of what you just said, as I heard the story and saw all the pieces coming together, not only is it about access to information, but it's also opportunity. So these individuals not only pointed out, hey, here's the opportunity, but they also gave you access to the training and support that you needed to honestly land in this wonderful spot that you're in now, impacting even more. I think about our K through 12 audience, but impacting them, growing them, teaching them, and one, they get to, I guess, benefit from the all the great experiences, rich experiences that you've had. So thank you for sharing that, and thank you for adding those pieces in there that reminds our Say More audience that life is not linear. It's
No,
not.
it's
It's
not.
not, and it's
Your
okay.
journey, your journey is the same. It's not linear.
It's not linear. So, as a trailblazer in multiple industries, what unique challenges do you face as a woman leader, and how did you navigate them?
I would say one of the first challenges is when you're the only one,
Yes,
right? You're the
yes,
only person in that room that looks like you. So
yes,
that could be a person of color, that could be a person, gender, that could be someone where you're from a different country because being in the military, one of my assignments was in Europe. And
yeah,
even my last assignment at the Pentagon, where we would go and negotiate the treaty that we put in place for the world,
uh huh,
I would walk in the room. I would normally be the only woman sometimes, or there's other women, but I'm the only woman of color. I'm the only U.S. female
yeah,
officer there at the table. And so, how do you navigate those spaces? And that's why confidence, going back to your early question, confidence to me is the secret sauce for women because we tend to doubt ourselves. So I've also been an adjunct professor and working with aspiring administrators, educational administrators. And one of the classes that I taught was HR functions. One of the questions I always asked is, have you read your job description? And then I have them read it. And the next class, we talk about it. And I specifically do this for the females that are in the class, the women, because
yeah,
what research shows is women will read a job description and say, I can do 90% of what's in that job. I can't do that 10%. I'm not going to apply. Men, on the other hand, read it and say, I can do 20%. I'm applying.
exactly.
It's confidence in knowing what you bring to the table. And so I like to help women in particular understand you are blessed with leadership skills. They don't look exactly like what you have heard and read in most books or what people talk about. And so that's why in my book, what I give is practical strategies. I take leadership principles and foundations that are strong and but are written really toward men, even though they don't say men. That's what
Yeah,
they're written toward, and I shape them so that they apply to women. And so I've been so blessed. One of my mentors is the most well-known leadership guru in the world, John Maxwell. I'm a
uh
part of
huh,
his coaching company. I'm a founding member of his coaching company, and he actually endorsed my book. But John has written almost 100 books on leadership.
Yes.
Those books, while they don't say male, female, really are geared toward men.
Uh-huh.
I want to help women step into the roles that God has blessed them to do because they are leaders. We lead our families. We lead our children. We lead our friends. We lead.
Yeah.
We lead.
We lead. And when I think about this, as you were talking just about not only the book, and certainly I need to grab the book, and I think our listeners need to grab the book as well. I'm inclined to think about that, this whole notion of being enough. Because here's the thing, we will undercut ourselves and say we're not ready, but the person that they bring in who lacks half of the skills, you'll train.
Exactly. Exactly. And then we get upset because it's like,
Correct.
why am I doing your job and you're getting the pay and all of the perks
Because
and
you
benefits?
didn't apply.
Because you
Yeah.
didn't apply. And what I
Yes.
say to women, and I say this to young men too, and men that
Yeah.
I work with, because I coach both,
Yeah.
is where is that gap and what have you done to fill the gap?
Yes.
So invest in yourself. We never stop growing. So
No.
just because you've completed your college degree, you don't need to stop growing at that point. You need to continue to invest in yourself. You are your biggest resource.
Yes.
Therefore, pour into that resource.
Guys, another drop the mic moment. Pour into yourself. It doesn't stop. It's about learning for life and lifelong learning. I love that. So, a lot of what you have talked about, and just to catch our audience up on this theme that I see is a reoccurring theme, is mentorship. So, when you think about this whole idea, what advice do you have for women who want to become effective mentors,
Hmm.
while advancing their own careers? Because sometimes, we both, and being in the careers that we've had, we hear about the crab mentality. So,
Yes,
yeah, that's a real thing.
it
So,
is a
what
real
could you
thing.
share with our listeners about, the advice for, you have for women who want to become effective mentors while at the same time advancing their own careers?
So what I will say to that young lady or
Hmm.
that leader is your job is to grow leaders. It's called the multiplication effect, and John talks
Hmm.
about this in his books, John Maxwell. I always tell people my what I try to do is I work myself out of my job
Yes.
by raising up the next person who can take my job. Therefore, I am now available to go do the next job that God has
Yes.
for me. I'm not
Yes.
threatened as a leader by the fact that you want my job. What I will do is tell you what you need to do to sit in that chair and help you if you want to help yourself to sit in
Yes.
the chair. And so I believe we have a responsibility to raise up the next leaders because I can't leave if and do what God is calling me next if I have not prepared people to come behind me. And so if you're a leader,
Yes.
do not be an insecure leader,
Exactly.
right? An insecure leader doesn't want to grow other people
No.
because they're afraid that that person's going to come take what they have. No, I'm going to give it to you.
Yes.
I'm going to give you what you need because now I can go off and do something else.
You're next. I love
My
it.
next, yes.
And I think, again, this whole notion of, you're going to take from me. And I'm like, no, whatever's for you, it's for you. I can't chase it down. It will be right there for you. And so I'm loving that you're not only saying that in our podcast, but I know in your book, and I'm going to reference that, you're in the leadership chair. Now what? You guide leaders through their roles. How would you, when you think about this, define success for women that are navigating leadership? Women often feel pressured, to conform to traditional leadership styles. How do you stay so authentic even throughout our conversation? It's like talking to your favorite girlfriend, your best friend. How do you stay authentic while maintaining, authority and certainly influence?
So it starts with one knowing your value,
Yes.
right? And what is your North Star? Why do
Yeah.
you do what you do? For me, I've always been passionate about two things: leadership and education. And so my North Star is growing leaders. And
Yeah.
as a superintendent, that's what I do. I'm equipping the next generation of leaders
Yes.
through what we call K-12 education.
Yes.
So it starts with one, knowing your value,
Uh-huh.
knowing then your priorities. I am not going to compromise my integrity for anyone.
Right.
As a brand new lieutenant, the first day of officer basic school, our instructor told us, never put yourself in a position where you compromise your integrity because it's the only thing that you have.
Yes.
And so you have to know who you are and be comfortable in your own skin. And that's why I encourage women to do that. I see you, another Dr. Kim, doing what you do through your podcast, reaching out, encouraging, building people up. You're not concerned that somebody else may go and have a podcast.
No.
That would be great that you inspired them to do that because you're here to do what God has called you to do. I am here to do what God has called me to do. And I want to help other people achieve that through whatever means God has blessed me to do that. So I do a podcast also. And as you've already said, I've written a
Yes.
book. I do leadership coaching, I mentor. And here's the key about mentorship. Mentorship is about you helping other people reach up, raise up through your experiences. But you got to do some coaching as a part of that. And
Yes.
coaching is, I'm not telling you the answers because the answer is already inside of you. I'm
Yeah.
asking you to write questions to draw it out of you because you
Yes.
have to own that, right? When, excuse me, when you stepped out to do what you're doing,
Yeah.
people supported you, they mentored you, but they also coached you to say, what could you be doing? What is the next
Right.
step for you? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? How
Yeah.
can you use those gifts and talents? And you do that, Kim. You're doing it through your podcast.
I love what you just said. And again, there's so many different points that you've already made that I'm going to replay this podcast a few times. And listeners, I'd encourage you to do the same thing. Share it with your friends, share it with your colleagues as well, because here it is. She mentioned not giving you the answers. We often find, especially if, in this world of followership, social media, that we believe that answers have to come from those who we are following. No, you mentioned something so powerful that it's within you. It's right there inside of you. The stories, their guidance, their conversations have to tease it out, pull it out, but it's already there. So again, I think so many people will be inspired. So many people will be going to Amazon and grabbing that book to make sure that it's one of their top reads. So when I think about just the power of what you say, I am often able to quickly pick up on that it didn't come just by happenstance, that there are situations, there are things that bring us and shape us and refine us and get us to who we are. So, have there been any significant setbacks that you faced as a leader, and how did it help you grow personally and professionally?
Oh, excuse me. I'm so sorry. My
Oh, no
allergy
worries.
season. There have been so many because with the highs come the lows.
Yes.
Um, as a young officer, I wasn't always as balanced as I am now. And so there was a period of time when I was just very focused on career, career, career.
Uh-huh.
And that didn't go well with my marriage.
Yeah.
And so it ended
Uh-huh.
because I was focused all really on my career.
Yeah.
And I had to learn through that process. And I'm blessed. My husband and I now have been married 28 years. But
Uh-huh.
the early version of Kim was not the Kim that you see sitting before you today. So God helped me learn that lesson. When I was working through my doctorate degree, I had a plan. And it was funny because everyone in my class, in my cohort, was like, the professor asked one time, who would they think finish who did we think would finish our degree first? And everybody said Kim. Kim will finish her degree first. She will get, I had a 3-year plan. Well,
Right.
life happened in that 3-year plan. My father passed away. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So I finished my degree at the 7-year mark
Yeah.
that you get for the degree. But praise God, I'm cancer free. 10 years now, cancer free.
Oh my
And
goodness, what a
so,
blessing.
even in my educational career, I thought the district I worked in would be where I would just climb that ladder to be maybe the superintendent. But that wasn't possible. The door closed, and God moved me
Yeah.
to a different district, which set me up to say, you know what? I can move to someplace else and be successful. And that's how I ended up moving out of the state that I had lived in for 20 plus years to a
Wow.
completely different state, where I know no one. I didn't know anyone when I moved here.
Yeah.
And you talk about those setbacks. Those setbacks were really set ups that God
Yes.
had set up, because He doesn't tell us the full plan that He has for us, because He did put a plan in place. He knew us before we were formed in our mother's womb. But if He showed us the whole picture, we would be like, oh, no, no,
We would
no.
be overwhelmed and we'd
No,
say, this is
can't,
not possible. Yeah.
exactly. I can't do that. No. So he shows us little pieces, and he closes doors so that he will then open the window for us to go. It's a combination. So what I would say, and I know it's a little drawn out, is
No,
I
that's
want
right.
to encourage people to understand those setbacks are set ups. If you take the time to learn from it, be still and listen to what God is saying to you, and if you seek wise counsel, and
Yes.
you are wise counsel, Kim, through the work that you are doing, people do not realize those nuggets come from a variety of places. They can be, so I always encourage people to build their professional
Yes.
library of books. Today we have podcasts, we have, res- we just have an abundance of resources.
Yeah.
Tap into those things and grow through these experiences, because they're really designed to set you up for the next blessing that God has in store for you.
Listeners, no setbacks, all setups. I mean, literally just reframing that. Just, I feel for a lot of people, as we think about, again, global, 10 countries, that burdens being lifted because their setback was only a setup for what the more is. And life has lots of commas. It is not a period. So thank you for that, Kim. When you've talked about just a moment ago, so many resources that are available, books, podcasts, social media, all these different levels of engagement. What advice do you have for other women who are seeking a network, a positive network? How do you go about it? Because there are lots of things that we can follow. I mean, we could be following all day and have ourselves tired of all the followership. How do you recommend and what advice do you give for women seeking to develop a strong network of support?
I love that question, because first it starts with seeking wise counsel. That's what
Mm-hmm.
the Bible tells us, right? To
Mm-hmm.
seek wise counsel and cast a wide net, meaning you don't have to just stay within your chosen career path. You should have relationships, and those relationships can be one in which you are deeply connected, but also through books, podcasts,
Yeah.
conferences. Who are the people that you are allowing to influence you? And seek out people who have traveled the road already and been successful within an ethical manner.
I love it.
Right? You don't want to seek out the person who, I got here by stepping on people to get there, because
Yes,
those people you step on going up are the same people you will see on your way down. No,
absolutely.
I am so blessed. I've had great mentors and sponsors. I am in two groups. I'm in a group of female, African American female superintendents.
Oh,
Most of these women I have not met personally, but we pour into each other in our group because about 2% of the nation's superintendents are African American females. It's a
oh, wow.
very small group. And
Yes.
we come alongside and help each other. When we have bad days or we're struggling, we can put it in the group and people will come around us and lift us up. We share
Yes.
tips and strategies we've used. But I'm also blessed to be in a small group of prayer warriors. We call ourselves the
Yes.
Young Queens. I'm the only educator in the group. One is in ministry, one is in corporate America in sales, the other one is a financial advisor. So we have different career fields, but we are all female leaders who support each other, women of faith. And so
Yes.
finding those groups, finding those resources like your podcast, even listening to my podcast that are
Yes.
going to give you tips on how to build you up. On Monday morning, or every morning during my routine,
Uh-huh.
Monday morning I'll listen to a sermon from a pastor that doesn't live in my area, so I listen to their podcast. And on
Right.
Tuesday, I listen to an educational podcast. I have two people that I really resonate with that I listen to. And so I'm feeding myself to start my day,
I love it.
right? To
I love
get me
it.
off on the right track. And then I have a music playlist of songs that encourage me, that I listen to. So it's finding different ways to encourage yourself, but always remembering at the end of the day, there's a tape playing in your head. Is it a positive or negative?
Right.
And it's whatever you feed.
It's whatever you feed. And the whole point, listeners, and I know you all just grabbed this, is that she is intentional. She is intentional. And we have to be intentional because, again, whatever you're eating, that's what you become. Whatever you're reading, whatever you're doing, that's what you become. That's what shapes you. So I love that because, and I think the other piece, and I think there's probably a question that comes to mind with this as well. You mentioned other leaders coming together, continuing to grow and learn from each other. What lessons have, or I guess probably that you can even point to for seasoned leaders to say that, there's still windows of growth that have to happen. And it's not even just, sometimes it's not growth, but just to stay where you are. Is there a comment that you could put on that, Kim, about those leaders that maybe you're at the spot where you desire to be, but there is still work to be done? What would you share with the seasoned leader?
What I would say is first and foremost is you never stop growing,
Yes.
because the things that got me to this chair aren't the things that are going to keep me in that chair.
Yes.
What's going to keep me in the chair is doing the job I currently have, which may require me to have additional skills.
Yes.
So how do I get those additional skills? I need to go to people who have been successful already doing that and find out from them, how are you doing this? What's the
Right.
lesson that you learned from this? What mistakes can I anticipate with that? Because I've made that mistake, that person can
Yes.
say, here's how to avoid it. When I took the role that I currently have, one of the things is I hired a coach. I have a
Yes.
coach.
Yes.
And I was very intentional, like you said, about the person that I chose. This person is a woman of color who was a
Uh-huh.
superintendent in a large district for 10 years. She was the first African American female superintendent. I am
Wow.
the first African American female
Okay.
superintendent. She did this job for 10 years. I
Yes.
am doing this job now for a year and a half.
Yes.
So she has experiences that I have yet to experience. So when I
Yes.
talk with her, I tell her what's going on. And she will then ask me questions. And then, because she coaches, but then she
Yes.
will also share with me some lessons learned of when she did it or how she did it. And
Right.
that helps me from avoiding those pitfalls that could cost me my job, actually.
Yes. Yes.
Certain ones that you commit actually can cost you your position. And so it is understanding just because I am here doesn't mean I stop growing.
Right.
I'm a scientist by degree, and so I always like to give people analogies. You think about a tree. A tree never stops growing,
No.
right? It's the conditions around that tree that will stop the tree from growing. So you could be a mighty redwood that should grow, very, very, very tall. But if you're in a
Right.
condition where you're not getting sunlight or you're getting limited water, you're only going to grow a certain height. I want to be out in the middle of the field where I can get everything that I need to accomplish what God has called me. So I want to be where I can grow
Uh-huh.
every single day. Even though I'm at this level,
Right.
people say to me, okay, so when you retire, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to go back to coaching and
Yes.
being an adjunct professor. Just because I transitioned from this, is to me, it's another chapter in the
It's
journey
another
that
chapter.
God has me on. So
I love that this it's the whole law. When I think about the leadership lid that sometimes is placed, and you will not, right. And I'm thinking about how you are able to cast that. I'm just so excited about the people that fall within your service area and district, because they will benefit from that. I mean, it matters the type of leader that you are and whether people will grow. And I know that you will probably have increase in applications, because our listeners will probably find you and say, you know what, that's the perfect environment for me. One that where I can be my very best version of myself, and that's encouraged. So I love that, and I can't believe that we have reached the lightning round. We are closing it out with the lightning round. So it's not even well thought out as far as what your response has to be. It's the first thing that comes to mind. So, what's one leadership book you think every woman should read?
The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership
Uh
by
huh.
John Maxwell. It is a foundational book. And
Uh
I know
huh.
some people are surprised to say that I didn't say my book, but it is a foundational book that should be in everyone's professional library. The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. Because
I
you
love it.
referenced one of it, the law of the lid.
Uh huh. There you go. So, a mistake you made that became a powerful lesson. What comes to mind immediately?
I was a young captain. I was what we would call a briefer for the commander in chief for the whole Europe.
Uh
And
huh.
I missed the time for the presentation. And I got there late. And so they had to
Oh my
reverse
goodness.
the order for the dignitaries that the sync was presenting. And I learned a very valuable lesson because I went straight from the presentation after I did it. I knew I had messed up to my boss's boss. Told the secretary I needed to see him. He was in a meeting.
Yes.
I sat there and I waited. When I went in his office, before he could say why was I there, I told him, I said,
Yeah.
sir, I messed up. I was late. I'm here to accept my consequences, the punishment, whatever it is
Yeah.
that you will, that you feel is appropriate, because I know the sync was not happy. He's going to call you, and I want you to know that whatever you decide, I am willing to accept. And if that means I don't present anymore, I'm okay with that. And that decision changed the outcome, because he said to me, "Well, I appreciate you taking ownership, not trying to explain it or justify or anything." And so when he talked to the sync, he told the sync what I did, the general, the four-star general,
Yeah.
and the general, when I saw him the next time, told me he was impressed with my response, and I was like, "Thank
I
you."
love it. What could have been an absolute calamity, you turned it because you met it head on.
I
I
took
love it.
ownership, and that's the
Yeah.
lesson. When you mess up, and even now, when I make a mistake, I will publicly apologize in a meeting. I will
Yeah.
put my apology in an email that lasts forever, right? Because
Yes.
I want to model the leadership that I want from others, which is my personal motto, which is to lead by example.
I love it. So, a piece of advice you wish you'd received earlier in your career, what would that be?
I would say be true to yourself and not try to be like others.
Oh, I love it. And lastly, your personal mantra for staying resilient as a leader.
I say to myself, you are enough. You have everything that you need, Kim, to do what you need to do. And what you don't have, ask God and he will give it to you. Because he
You
didn't put you
know,
there to fail. He did not put you where you are to fail. Ask God
and
for it.
you will not fail. I love it. Say more, audience. What an amazing guest Dr. Kim Moore has been. We knew it, I felt it, and I know that you will share it a bazillion times. I want to thank you, Dr. Moore, for joining me on the Say More podcast, investing in others in 2025. I know it's going to be a great 2025 for you. Know that the virtual door is always open here at Say More. And Say More listeners, remember to like, share, and of course, subscribe. Until the next time, bye bye.